we have been drinking all the time.
You go to the place and the bartender will be like, yeah, your tab has already been set up, guys. Just do what you need to do. Call an Uber. Or walk or whatever works for you.
Set standards for our highways for everything. What's it feel like? And Lynn sends me back, here's lots. But he doesn't tell me, is it miles?
5 minutes away.
Every mile of
Where
the
it
day?
is, and
Or
that's
is
where
it just?
she actually has jogged down there and back.
I want to.
Yeah.
I want to do this.
I ran the 5K.
And the smiling. Yeah, and say, answer the question.
Everything, I was from Denny, and it's just been a matter of years, Denny, that's just. Yeah. You drive around. You go down. Yeah, that was like 10 years at the most. Yeah, really fast. I worked at Flower Mountain in 90,000 when it was exploding. And now I go down and I'm like, it's even exploding when I was there. It's just not even worry about it. Yeah. So that's his.
It's unusual to see me.
It's been here like a year.
Try to stay away. We're usually over there, you know. I just like, yeah, I saw that. But then it kind of reminded me.
As simple as that. Figure out the difference between this and this.
All right, it's 5 o'clock. I think it's time to start our study session. Summer, would you please call roll?
Commissioner Patterson?
Here.
Commissioner Norwood?
Here.
Commissioner Siragusa?
Here.
Commissioner Roberts? Here. Commissioner Stallings? Here. Commissioner Orr? Mayor Mason?
Here.
All present.
Item 2, at the Commissioner's request, discuss any item of concern on the regular session agenda. Is there anything on the agenda anyone would like to bring up or talk about? No? All right. Item 3.1, Call Lake Water Supply Program Financial Update. Aaron, I think this is you.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. We're back again talking about Call Lake financials. The last update that I gave you was in May, so these are updated through August. Didn't have time to get out the September numbers, so this will just be through August. This is where we have budgeted and where we have come in sales tax since the inception of the sales tax that was passed associated with Call Lake. In the current year for July and August, we had $1.799 million in collections, and we have budgeted $1.77 million, so we've exceeded our budgeted by $29,218 for the first 2 months, which is a 1.65% increase over where we budgeted. It is also a 3% increase from the first 2 months of last fiscal year. When we look at the collection of the sales tax in total since the inception, we have collected $70.1 million. We have earned an additional interest of $1.2 million, bringing us to $71.3 million total. Of that, $50.8 million has been paid out to the 5 different loans that we've taken out from DWSRF and FAP for this project to be constructed. As of the end of August, there was $20.5 million sitting in our accounts, with $15 million of that invested in T-bills and the rest remaining in cash. And actually, a couple weeks ago, we had our next set of payments due on all 5 of those loans, and the total of all of those payments was $9.7 million. So that came out as we had some cash. We had one of the CDs mature in September, right in time to make that payment, so that we had enough cash to do that.
So then we didn't have to get into the 20 million then, is that what I'm hearing, or was that?
The 20 million is where it came from. 20 million, it includes 15 million in investments and 5 million in cash.
Okay.
And so 15 million, 5 of that matured, and so it moved into cash, and then we made the $9 million in payments, so it left $300,000 in cash and the rest invested. And then as we bring in more, we'll do more investments if the laddering allows us to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. These are the status of the loans that are associated with CAW. To date, the 2016 and 2018 FAP notes have been fully drawn down. The 2018 SRF has also been fully drawn down. The 2019 FAP, we have drawn down 64% and have the other 36% remaining to draw down at this point. Or sorry, reverse that. We've drawn down 36% and we have the remaining to draw. And that 2020 DWSRF is 97% drawn. The remaining part of that is tied to retainage that's due to Garney Construction and won't come until we accept the project at the end. So that money will stay sitting there until the time that DEQ releases those funds. So overall, our loans and interest are $341 million. We've drawn down $300.8 million of that, and we have 40.6 remaining to draw overall on all the funds. In this quarter, we added $583,000 in interest that we earned on the FAP funds. We drew down $18.7 million in payments to various contractors and easements, legal fees, anything like that. And then the net change of what's available is a decrease of $18 million of those loan funds sitting in the accounts that went out the door to pay for things related to the CAW program. Additionally, we have 2 other funding sources that have, through resolutions, been committed to this project. One is $4 million for congressional funding. We've been working diligently with HUD over the last few weeks as we've been assigned somebody to get all the documentation in and do that process. We are working through some NEPA requirements that they have in addition to what we were doing with NEPA on the Army Corps of Engineers, and engineering has been greatly a big help working through that process with our grant coordinator, Stephen, to get all that turned in. As soon as we get the approval there, we'll draw those funds and get that down and in our bank account. And then the other funding source is the American Rescue Plan Act. That was a state and local fiscal recovery act. And when we did the last change order for Garney, we appropriated some of those funds over there to fund that change order. And we have not drawn that. We've largely been waiting for the Ames project, which we've now kicked off to see how much we were going to need in the American Rescue Plans Act funds to see if we needed to reallocate any from here before we draw it on the CAW project.
Do those all have to be committed by the end of this year, or?
Right, the American Rescue Plan Act funds all have to be committed through a PO being issued and a contract signed with a contractor by December 31st of this year. And so we have everything in place that we need for CAW. We're just trying to get everything in place for the Ames project so that we can finalize where those are all going to fall.
You don't see any problem with us not meeting that date, though?
No, there is a lot of work to still be done on Ames, and in fact, tonight on the agenda, there's an item for you guys to consider an interlocal agreement with Buy Board, which is a cooperative purchasing that we're looking to engage with because they have already bid out the similar type of work that we're doing with Ames, and that would speed up the process for us to be able to get that designed and built and awarded by December. Engineering has been working diligently on that, and that's the piece that we need to be able to go that route to meet the deadline that we need to meet to do the slip lining for the Ames project.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Here's the status of all of the loans on the payment side. Total loan amounts are $334.1 million. Total principal payments through the end of August were $18.6 million. Total interest payments, $30.1 million. Loan origination fees of $2 million, which leaves outstanding principal balances of $315 million that we still have to repay on these loans. The total of all those payments, principal and interest, is $48.7 million that we've made on those to date. And then our last slide here just shows the status of the budget. Since the last time, we have added about $400,000 to the budget overall, and that was to consider the award on the Mayerfield case that has recently been settled and some other easement costs that have come up to resolve those. And so at this time, you can see that there is a remaining budget of $395,000. And I believe, I can't remember, I think it was the last meeting, we awarded the $190,000 per the judgment for the Mayerfield case that will come out of that funding. And then there's just other ancillary fees. I know we're talking about some software licensing and some other things that have come up that we need to take care of to finish out the program. So to date, we have a total budget of $344.4 million. We have had actual expenditures of $304. We passed that $300 million mark. And we have 39.7 remaining encumbered, with that 395 available to take care of the things that we have open. Of that 39.7 million that's open, 36.9 is committed to Garney, 2.5 million is committed to Garver, and then we have some other ancillaries for about $500,000. Are there questions on the call program that I can answer for you?
I think you just said it. I want to make sure. What do we think the total tab was going to be at the end?
At this point, it's $344.4 million that's in the budget.
Do we have any contingency in that?
We have released the contingency for Garney at this point.
Yeah, with
There-
change order 7, the contingency was factored in as part of that. They still submit, I believe, or were submitting contingency items. I don't know what their current amount is. Is it $3 million and something of contingency used up?
I think if I understand Commissioner Stallings is like outside the contracts, right, Commissioner? Not in the contract?
Well, to me, it's one big pile of money. and people ask me, how much is this thing gonna cost when we're done? And it seems to be somewhat of a little moving target. What should I tell people when they ask?
$345 million.
345 million.
Yeah, because we're at 344 point whatever. and-
Or there are still a few things that I know that aren't included in this budget that will need to be addressed, more operational things. And so is it here or is it included when we get to operations? A lot of things to furnish the building and get it set up to run whenever the lab supplies and some other things like that. And so that's really the big piece right now that I know that's outstanding that needs to be addressed.
Well, when we go to those meetings and Garney talks, Jason talks, and he always talks about some things that we will have to, he talks about the future and things that we're going to have to address in the future. And since I'm not way on the inside, I don't know whether that's $100,000 or $100 million. When he starts talking about those vague things that are not resolved today.
The things that he's talking about, to my understanding, that aren't resolved are things that still have to be resolved, but per change order 7 have to be resolved within the amended GMP, which I think is $256.8 million now. Jason knows that. The caveat is the HDD issues and the claim that could come, but we've always known that the claim, and don't know if that claim's going to come or not. We'll see. But I'm not aware of any big-ticket items. Are you, Morali, that's outside of the
Yeah, I
funding?
don't think there is anything that is beyond HDD.
Okay, I know about HDD. I
Right.
just want to make sure there wasn't something else that I just wasn't personally aware of, that you guys all knew.
Right.
So,
And whenever he thinks about, like, he mentions about, we have not, like, released any contingency, which is $4 million. I think we released about $2 million, something like that. But there is still $2 million
Okay.
in the contingency we have not released to the contractor. So time to time, he claims, hey, I need those money back, and we have not released any of that stuff. But that is part of change order.
so I think it's fair to say that we are very close to our target number. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, as Aaron said, there may be some costs that aren't in that 345 that have to do with, I would call them operational costs, buying chairs, tables, lab supplies that haven't been contemplated. I don't know that that's going to be, I mean, that could add up to hundreds of thousands or $1 million right there. But at some point, we're going to pay for operating that facility out of our regular budget. So that should probably be accounted for in the next fiscal year, because we're supposed to be, is it substantially complete in July, but or
September 11th.
September 11th. Okay, it'll be easy to remember, 9/11, 2025.
And I do anticipate, because we have had higher earnings than were projected when we started this project on our interest, that we will have interest funding to be able to do those furnishings for the new building out of that,
Oh, good.
out of those funds.
Yeah, you just told us we're earning over $500,000 in 1 quarter on interest on the funds that were,
Yes, because we waited to draw down that FAP money, but it will slowly come to a halt. But I think over
Sure.
the time we've had it in the bank, we've earned enough to be able to pay for the furnishings.
So that American Rescue, those funds, what, it's almost $6 million or something like that?
Yes,
We don't actually have that in-house. I mean, it's not in our account. Is that right?
it is in our account.
It is in our account?
Yes.
Okay.
It's being held in unearned revenue right now
Okay,
on our
that was my
financial
next question. Are
statements.
we drawing interest on that, or?
Yes, we are. That's invested in T-bills right now as well.
Okay. Good job.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Anything else? All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. Okay. Am I moving on down or here? This way?
on city board.
Yeah, okay, that was part of that.
Yeah, these are just
Yeah,
attachments.
okay. That's what I'm doing. Okay, I'll go to 3.2, update on the city ward redistricting. Mr. Hunter? David?
PowerPoint or the PDF?
What's that?
Is that the PDF or the PowerPoint? PDF. Yes. Mayor, Commission, this is just a report on some changes that we are looking at doing as a result of the changes in population from the 2010 to the 2020 census. If you just scroll down. So what we're going to go over is just what's in our ordinances, the regulatory requirements, also in relation to state law. Very briefly, we'll look over the current state the ward boundaries and the population counts from 2010 to 2020. We'll look at where the most change occurred, and the main requirements that we're trying to facilitate is making sure that not one district has more population than the other. We want to make sure that there's no change in voting power across all of the wards or voting districts. And then we'll look at our proposal to change this, what we've actually proposed. We've done some research with OSU. We're talking with OU Center for Spatial Analysis, and we'll just tell you what the next steps are and kind of our time frame for facilitating these steps. You scroll down, please. So this is just the state law, and state law essentially says that following every census, we shall look at our boundaries, our voting areas, and we'll just verify that significant change has not occurred from the average to make sure that they're all relatively the same. Relatively simple, take your counts, pull them from the census, and look at the change over time. Scroll down. Oh, and one thing about the code that I forgot to say is what has been established in our local code is a 4% change from the average. Not sure why that was set, but it's a value that's set in our ordinance. I did try and research whether or not there was some statistical grounding in that. I found something close 5% because that's the 95th percentile, but nothing really that I could find in any of the literature. So if you look at the boundaries, what you're going to see is the majority of the boundaries 3, 4, 5, and 6. If you look at the changes in those ones, we are going to be essentially under that 4% change from the mean. But if you look at 1 and 2, you'll notice 1 has a significant change of 7.97% positive away from the mean, and 2 was a significant change to the negative. And a lot of this, it just makes sense. If you drive around Enid, people are moving to the west, to the north. That's where a lot of that development is occurring. So a lot of it just makes sense without having to get scientific about it. Next slide. So once again, we're just zeroing in on those two. We don't have to do anything to the other ones because they are within the 4% requirement away from the mean. But we did look at, okay, we've got 1, we've got 2. That's where the change was. So how can we affect the boundaries to fix that change and not really affect voting power or anything like that? The other thing that we had to make sure of is if we change any of the boundaries, we didn't all of a sudden kick one of you out of your own district, which I did on the first round, which we're not going to go into that. I will say that we did, since it was kind of something that we needed an objective third party, we did contract with OSU, their geography department. We had them take census numbers, ward boundaries, and essentially kind of look at a bunch of different scenarios on how we can change it and get bound close to that 4% boundary. Next slide. So just very briefly right here, we look at 3, 4, 5, and 6, no change. But what we found out is we moved 788 people from Ward 1 to Ward 2. And if you'll notice now, if you look before, that boundary was kind of weird and we had a discontinuity between in Ward 2. What we did was we cut that out and actually made that a uniform boundary. So now that you have a clean line, and that actually moved those boundaries to there. Ward 1 now is a negative 1.2% change away from the mean. Ward 2 is a 4.64, which is above the 4%. However, would you scroll down a little bit one more time? So One thing that you'll notice on Ward 2, if anybody is ever driving down across the bridge, there is a small little multifamily development just on the other side of the bridge called Sunridge Estates. And when we looked at the census data, the majority of the population there is Marshallese or Marshallese Americans. So based on looking at that and our discussion with OSU, we felt that's not going to dilute the voting power, even though it does push us slightly over that 4% boundary. It's not going to actually change anything relative to voting power because of the non-citizenry aspect of that. Scroll down. So our next steps, because the Center for Spatial Analysis at Oklahoma University, they are actually the people who take our data, they verify it, they make the change to any type of voting precincts, ward boundaries, anything else. They do the official changes for the state. So we've already sent our information to them for review. One thing to note is these changes that we are proposing, that we're looking at, they're not going to affect any upcoming, any changes in the upcoming elections. So no one has to worry about a different polling location or different types of boundaries. However, we do need to have it in 60 days prior to an election, which is why we're bringing this to you today, just for your review and awareness, so that once the Center for Spatial Analysis gets back to us, tells us if we need to make any changes, we can come back to you and get your approval on those changes. And bearing that, if there's any questions. It's relatively straightforward, I think.
When will the residents be notified?
They wouldn't be notified until, one, we get the results back and the approval back from the Center of Spatial Analysis, and two, we get the approval from the commission that they're okay with the changes as well. So after that, there's no requirement for notification, but after that, any notification would happen after you guys say yes.
As far as elections go, they would be notified by the election board if they were moved into a different precinct.
And it's my understanding that obviously we're not going to do this before November. But what about the February election?
This would affect the February election.
Okay, so we would try to have it done before then?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah. Our goal is 60 days.
February, Ward 1 and Ward 2 is not being voted on, is what
That's
Ross
right.
is saying.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it
Only thing that
doesn't,
would be changed.
so it might affect, but it doesn't affect the elections.
Okay.
Yes.
But I think our goal was to have the boundaries changed, essentially, so polling places could be changed. I've already been talking to Garfield County. They've kind of said the same thing.
Okay. Questions? Comments?
Did any of these type changes happen when you were the election board secretary?
I knew when to get out. Right before the census.
Okay, well, if you don't have any questions, thank you very much.
Short meeting, but after we adjourn, I want, Derek's going to take some photos, so if we can stay together long enough before we break.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, Mr. Hunter, we needed you to talk a little longer.
I'm sorry.
But,
Well, you guys have to, say something's wrong with it.
no, we appreciate you spending time on this. I know we're mandated by law to get this updated, and you explained it very well, so thank you. With that being said, I am going to adjourn, and we'll come back at 6:30. However, I'm going to ask the commission to stay up here. I think Derek wants to take some photographs, is that correctly? So don't run off. So we are adjourned.